Hi, welcome to Beef Cattle Institute's Ask the Experts, where our experts answer your question. I'm Brad White, joined today by Dr. Bob Larson. Hi, Bob.
Hello, Brad.
And Dr. Philip Lancaster.
Hi, Brad.
We're happy to have these guys here because they're going to get a chance to answer one of your questions and give their opinion. And as they give their opinion, they'll get a score that's up to 10 points. If you have a question you'd like us to talk about, you can send us an email at bci@ksu.edu. Today's question comes from a listener, and I think it's a great one because it's very applicable, and it is also pretty simple. Should I unroll hay when I'm feeding cows? So if I've got round bales, should I unroll hay when I'm feeding cows? And Philip, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay. Well, I think there are some benefits to it. If I'm unrolling hay, I'm spreading nutrients out across the pasture. It's easy for me to move that around every time I put out hay so that I'm getting a different part of the pasture. I think there's some benefits as far as calf health. I don't have mud packed around the bale ring. I don't have calves getting in there and getting trampled and getting broken legs or, stuck in the mud or whatever. And so I think there are some definite positives to it.
So calf health, spreading nutrients around, absolutely. I think both are really good positives. So you're a pro for unrolling hay. So 7 points to start with Philip. Bob?
Well, I think there's some times when unrolling hay is a really good idea, but some of the negatives are you're probably going to waste quite a bit more. And it really does depend on the type of hay as well. So some of our poor quality forages, things like that, if you unroll it, I think you're going to end up wasting a lot. They're going to eat the very best, the leaves and that kind of stuff. And in a year when forage is kind of hard to come by and quite expensive, I probably would prefer to keep it in a bale ring so that I can reduce the waste. But I'm going to admit that I do have to probably worry a little bit more about mud, worry a little bit about exposure of calves to those areas, and try to make that as good an environment as I can while putting it in a bale rig.
Excellent. So, Bob, you had 7 points, but you actually lost a point before we came on the air by making fun of me. So you're actually, I got 6 points. I don't know. That's the official ruling from the judges. Yeah. So now I want you to flip positions, and Philip, you argue for what are some of the reasons that you might not want to unroll it. Bob highlighted some of them. Is there anything else to add to what Bob said?
Well, I think waste is probably the biggest one, and so that you're not getting as much utilization out of that hay as you can, and they're going to lay on it, they're going to defecate on it, and it just becomes bedding, especially like you said, if it's poor quality hay. Another negative is that if I am not moving it around the pasture, I've only got a limited amount of space to unroll it, or if I have to try to unroll it down steep slopes or things like that, then it's not as effective as cows being able to eat and things like that. And so then I waste more, or I have spots where I am killing out the pasture because I've got a whole bunch of dead material on top of it come springtime.
Right in that small spot. All right, Bob, pros for unrolling.
I do like unrolling when we've got calves out there for the main purpose that I've run into situations, and it depends on weather, depends on location and things like that, where a area where you're feeding round bales in round bale feeders, whether it's a dry lot or just a corner of a pasture, they can become really messy, and we can really have some calf health challenges. And so in those situations, I will actually have them move towards unrolling bales so that they stop congregating calves and cows in a small area. So from a calf health standpoint, it's something to consider sometimes.
Okay. And that ends up with both of you having 8. So I've got a toss-up question for you on what do you expect is the average percent of hay? You both said, hey, you might waste a lot more when you're unrolling. What's the average percent of hay that you would waste in unrolling versus feeding in a bale ring feeder?
Well, I think it depends. How much am I unrolling? Am I unrolling just enough for that day, or am I unrolling hay for the 3 or 4 days? And so the more hay I unroll, the higher the percentage of wastage. So I think you're probably wasting, if you're doing that multiple days, you're probably wasting 25-30% when unrolling, when you're probably 10 to 15% in a hay feeder.
Okay, so a 10 to 20% range.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing. But I honestly think you could easily waste 50% unrolling it, particularly if you unroll several days. I think you're wasting a significant amount, which is why it's a hard decision.
Yeah. So you might only want to do it part-time, and I'm going to lean closer to Bob's answer. I have no data either, but it's going to be somewhere in that ballpark. So Bob ends up 9, Philip 8. Thank you for joining us. If you have another question, something you'd like us to talk about, you can always send us an email at bci@ksu.edu.